Hi, this is Jackie's Reading Room, and I'm your host, Jackie P. Have you turned some pages today? About a week ago, I went to the movies with my daughter, 15, and her friend, almost 15, and we went to see the film Where the Crawdads Sing. Now, I don't know if, like me, you like going to the movies, but I really do, and I especially love to go see an adaptation of a book because it feels like the characters um, jump out. They become alive right on the big screen, and so that's where the Crawdad Sing comes into play. It was first a novel written by Delia Owens. She's actually a wildlife scientist. And all three of us had read the book before, which was super because then you can actually talk about, what's the same, what's different. And we did just that after the film. We were able to uh, talk about the acting. How did the actors portray those characters that we had imagined in our heads while we were reading? And we all agreed that the cinematography was beautiful. The images of the marsh that I had only imagined in my mind came alive on the big screen, and there's some very beautiful close-ups of insects or birds in nature. So I thought that was very well done. So today we're going to talk about from page to screen when a book is transformed into either a TV series or a film. I seem to naturally gravitate towards books that either were made into films or will eventually be made into films, possibly because I'm a very visual person and I really can picture the story in my mind when I read. When I was doing my research for this podcast, I found out that the first book, or what we think is the first book that was made into film, it would be Cinderella back in 1899. It was adapted to the screen. Now, I don't think that anything survives from that. But in 1910, the classic by Mary Shelley, Frankenstein, was adapted. And of course, several adaptations later as well. For example, the 1994 Kenneth Branagh film. Many, many classics have been adapted, but also all kinds of titles. I'm going to put in the description for the podcast this link for that I found that was called 40 of the all-time greatest book to movie adaptations. So you can maybe get some information from there. In recent years, you may have noticed, obviously, many young adult fiction was adapted to the screen. And I can just mention, obviously, the Twilight trilogy of books that was made into 4 films, and the Hunger Games trilogy that was also made into 4 films. And I actually read all of these before the movies came out, and I was able to kind of be part of that hype because there was a big hype amongst the teens for these series. Now, you might ask yourself, so should I read the book before I watch the film or watch the series? My answer is going to be yes, ideally. We can't always do that. Sometimes the film comes out and then you realize later that it was based on the book. You can always go to the book afterwards. And sometimes I don't know, you can't find the book because it's been published for it's been out for a while and you can't find it at your local bookstore or library. So sometimes you can't. But I would say ideally, and that's what I try to do, is you want to read the book first. And why do I like to do this? Because I feel that you get to know the characters, you get to know the story, and the setting is also super important. So the time and place uh, in which the book takes place, you have like an image in your mind, and then when you see it on the screen, sometimes it's very similar to what you imagined, but usually it gives you another perspective. Um, of what you imagined, and I always like to do that. I often will do this with my students. I will have them read a book that was made into a film, for example, or a series, and then we compare. Or I find a similar film if there isn't a film. So let me tell you about three books adapted to the screen that I loved, and I'm going to give you also one title that was not the case. So book into series. There's many of them. Episode 4, actually, of my podcast was on Heartstopper, the graphic novel that was made into a very good Netflix series. So you can go back and listen to that. Recently, you may have noticed that the classic by Margaret Atwood, The Handmaid's Tale, which was published in 1985, was made into an excellent series. Season 1 is actually the story of the novel. Now, seasons 2, 3, 4, 5 are just kind of imagined, and they depart from Margaret Atwood's work. But still very good. One book that I had my students read was Killing Eve, codename Villanelle. This is the first book of a series of 3 books written by Luke Jennings. I read all 3 books, and it's really good. Same concept here. Season 1 is based on book 1, and after that, they depart from the novels. But very interesting, and you have some amazing actors in Killing Eve, like Sandra Oh. So if you want to watch, you don't have to have read the book, but I find that it gives you a nice perspective if you do. Um, Perhaps many of you here out there have read the novel Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn, which came out in 2007. It's a very dark novel. I would not recommend that to anyone that's, I think, under 18, because it tackles self harm and very difficult mother daughter relationships, to say the least. You'll understand when you either read or watch or do both. Um, and Gillian Flynn is known for her unsympathetic characters. I can think of Gone Girl, the woman in there. I love to hate her, to be honest. Maybe that was the goal. So Sharp Objects was made into an excellent mini series in 2018 by Quebec director Jean-Marc Vallée, with the excellent Amy Adams. And actually, the series was nominated for 8 Emmys. Very well done. The dark atmosphere of the book comes out so well on the screen. It was a bit it was a bit stressful to watch, if I can say that. And it's not a long book to read, so you can totally tackle that novel and then get into that miniseries. There's just a few episodes. Very well done. A few years back, I read an excellent book. It's still on my top maybe 10 of excellent books out there. It's called Still Alice by Lisa Genova. And Still Alice tells the story of Alice, who is a Harvard professor. And at the age of 50, she is diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. Now, I'm going to be going towards that big 50 soon. And I can't imagine this happening. So she starts losing her words, and her words are her life. So you see the decline in Alice's cognitive abilities. It's heartbreaking, but at the same time, there are such unbelievable characters in that story. It was made into a great film in 2014, starring Julianne Moore as Alice. She actually won the Oscar for Best Actress for this role. It was simply phenomenal. This is the kind of film that I found that the book was not, it was not too long, but you really got a really good sense of the uh, the what happens with Alice, and of course her, all the people around her. So I thought that was very well done. Now, I told you I was going to give you a title that didn't work for me. So in 1994, I was a young um, and wild and free woman, and I fell in love with the film Forrest Gump with the incredible Tom Hanks. I must have watched that film about, I don't know, 20,000 times. I can almost quote it by heart. When I watched it with my daughters, they kept telling me to shut up, in a polite way. Actually, I don't know if it was that polite, but because I kept saying the dialogue. So I fell in love with the film, and I have the soundtrack, and I had the poster and all this, and then I read the book afterwards. So the film is based on the 1986 novel by Winston Groom, and when I read the novel, I was totally disappointed. Now, the novel is, I don't even know how to describe it for you. To me, because I had fallen in love with Forrest as played by Tom Hanks, it's like the Forrest from the novel was not the one that I knew and loved. So, and it was such a total opposite that it it destroyed, well, it destroyed the novel, not my love for the film. So you see that sometimes, that happens, very rarely though, and obviously most of the time, I enjoy reading the book first and watching later. So for example, I would love to, in the next few weeks and months, read the novel. It's a historical fiction, The Last Letter to Your Lover, because it's been made into a Netflix film. So I could just sit down and just watch the film, right? I don't have to read the book. I don't. But I would like to get all the details, because of course in a novel you can put a lot more information on, who the characters are, their backstory. You can have flashbacks. Of course, in films you can have that too, but it's of course it's done in a different way. So listen, there are a lot of books out there that were adapted into film. Sometimes the film adaptation is excellent. Sometimes it's so, and sometimes it's really not worth it. But the book, I find, is always worth it. I might have to do a part two of this podcast with more books made into film that I really enjoyed. So hopefully, I was able to inspire you to read first and watch later. And listen, if you like this podcast, you can share and tell people about it. And you can even go back to the other ones that I've uh, done before. So until next time, keep turning those pages. Take care.